Good morning, PT on Ice Daily Show. My name is Dr. Jessica Gingrich, and I am a TA with the CMFA Pregnancy and Postpartum course. Today, we're going to talk about subjective clusters for the non-internal physical therapist. So before we get started, like always, I want to talk to you about some of the courses we have coming up. Our next online course starts July 5th. And the next live course is July 30th in Sandy, Utah. These courses go pretty quick, so if you have been on the fence about it and you want to dive into it, head over to ptonice.com to secure your spot. So, okay, subjective clusters for the non-internal physical therapist. I briefly talked about this on a Vice that I did several months ago, and I thought it would be a great idea to bring this to PT on Ice just to kind of help give a little bit of direction for the people who are not doing internal exams, or even for the people who are internal therapists, but maybe their patient doesn't want one, they are pregnant, or they're newly postpartum. So if you have taken any of the ICE courses, you have heard and learned the value of objective data. You can't make good decisions with bad data. However, what if you can't get objective data? So we know that we can screen the back, hips, the shoulder. We can do a neuro screen. We can do segmental testing. We can get good objective data that we can go back and retest after we've intervened. You will always have this subjective data. You know, I leak with double unders, or I leak with a clean, and then you have like reps and weights that you can dive into. But what happens if we are dealing with something that is exclusively pelvic floor dysfunction and we don't have those two objective data? So symptoms may include leakage, and that's leakage of any kind, urine leakage, gas leakage, or stool. Pressure in the vagina or rectum, painful insertion, that can include penile insertion, digital insertion, bedroom toys, speculum, anything. Urinary frequency, urinary urgency, constipation, difficulty emptying bowels or bladder, or even pain. And I want to dive into a little bit more about pain. That could be painful insertion, that could be clitoral pain, that could be pain around the vulva, or just pelvic girdle pain. So if someone comes in with a complaint of leakage, do we just assume that they're weak? Or if they come in and their chief complaint is, I pee all the time, it seems like I'm in the bathroom every waking minute, are we going to assume that they're overactive? No, so neither. This is why I want to talk to you today. So this is going to be a good time if you want to pause what you're doing and get out a pen and paper or type this down. I'm going to go over some of the subjective data that I get that leads me to think overactive or weak. So we'll start with overactive. So some of the stuff that I typically see with overactive pelvic floor is going to be leakage, pressure, urinary frequency, urinary urgency, constipation, painful insertion, difficulty emptying bowels or bladder. Some of the symptoms that I see with a weak pelvic floor are going to be leakage, heaviness or pressure, global weakness or deconditioning, and then even leaking right after voiding. So why I wanted to talk about this morning, briefly talk about this at the beginning, is even if you are an internal therapist and the only way that you gather your objective data is internally, might be a problem, again, if the client doesn't want a pelvic exam. If they're newly postpartum, they've got stitches, they might even be afraid to really have anything in their vagina right now. Or again, if you're just not internally trained. And so if you're not internally trained and you feel overwhelmed by the symptoms that these clients are telling you, your first thought is going to be like, I'm going to refer, right? That's going to be our first thought. I think that is a valuable tool, like if you can recognize that, and to be honest with your patients, right? I really believe that you would benefit from having your pelvic floor muscles assessed, and I'm not trained to do that, and I'm going to find someone who can do that for you. And you've got a Facebook group where you can throw a message in, and you're going to have so many people reply telling you, hey, this is an ICE trained PT. They're also trained internally, and you can refer them to that person. But what if you don't have that option? What if you are in an area where there really aren't a whole lot of internal therapists? Find a working hypothesis with your subjective clusters. So you either have an overactive hypothesis, or you have a weak hypothesis. At ICE, we believe that if you are ICE trained, you believe in the power of keeping them in the gym. So let's say you refer them to an internally trained therapist. They may get some supine exercises like Kegels, clamshells, bridges. Maybe they get the fun little TA activation, and then the recommendation to stop squatting, running, jumping, or whatever brings on their symptoms. Oh, just don't do that. It makes you pee in your pants. So now that person is going to get better. Their symptoms are likely going to go away or decrease significantly. So then they're going to start feeling really good, and then they want to get back into the gym because they're not leaking as much anymore. And then they go and they hit those 5 double unders, and they soak their pants. Where's their head going to be? I failed. I failed physical therapy. Or, if they're postpartum, oh, this is my life now. This is what people have told me. They warned me about this. So keeping them in the gym is powerful. So here's an example. If you have someone that comes in and they have a broken ankle, they have a cast on their foot, how are you going to keep them in the gym? Maybe you suggest when you row, hey, we're going to actually keep your foot out of the foot pedal, and you're just going to row with your other leg. When that leg gets tired, throw your other foot back on, and then now maybe we're just going to row with a hinge pattern. Single leg squats, holding onto the rig. Push-ups. Maybe you do an elevated push-up with that broken leg elevated or hooked onto the other leg. There's ways to modify around anything that's going to include pelvic floor dysfunction. So if you can't find a modification, just start thinking outside the box, right? Find the aggravating factors and then give them options. So if you have someone that comes in and you're thinking they're weak, you've looked at the subjective clusters, you've looked at the person in front of you, and you're thinking your hypothesis top of the list is, hey, I'm kind of thinking this is a global weakness thing. Pelvic floor is probably weak, but they go to CrossFit every day for an hour. So maybe you can encourage them to get to the gym 5 minutes early, and you can do some pelvic floor prep, right? They can maybe do some of those Kegels. Maybe you can get them in a different position. So if they have leakage with squatting, you can get them in a deep supported squat and have them activate their pelvic floor there. From there, you go into the workout. They've got jumping. So then you modify that. Maybe they can't do double unders at all. They do 1 double under and they are leaking. But if they can get 20 double unders before leaking, maybe we can do sets of 15 to 18 where they're working submaximally. If that's just a no-go and they try single unders, that doesn't work. Maybe you can do alternating single unders where you hop back and forth between feet. You've got step-ups. You've got even plate hops, line hops. The value of keeping people in the gym is awesome. So even when they come in and say, hey, when I jump, or when I run, I leak. Let's find that submaximal threshold and train that. Because when we are in that position, when we are training the pelvic floor jumping or impact, the pelvic floor is stressed. The pelvic floor is getting stronger. We just have to do it within a capacity that that muscle can withstand. The other side of that is if they do leak a little bit, let them know that it's okay. This is not something that's going to ruin your pelvic floor. Now 22 double unders was too much. Let's back it off just by a few reps and see what we can do there. On the flip side of that, you have an overactive pelvic floor with leakage, with double unders. So now we maybe get that person to the gym 5 minutes early, and they're doing some diaphragmatic breathing in child's pose or happy baby. And then give those same modifications during the workout, And then maybe even after that workout, they're hitting that diaphragmatic breathing in a stretch position as well. So now, I know you guys are probably thinking now, what are other ways that we can modify? What are other examples of how, if they are leaking with a weak pelvic floor, if they are leaking with a strong pelvic floor or an overactive pelvic floor, how else can I go into this? And so this, you're going to have to wait. You're going to wait for another about 6 weeks before I'm back on the podcast again. And then next time I'm going to talk about how to relax the pelvic floor. So how can we get these people from this overactive to just letting that go? Harder than you think. So I want to end with this, is when we have a client in our clinic, we want to make sure that we explain to them why we are doing what we're doing. Don't underestimate the power of why. I'm going to have you modify these exercises this way. I'm going to have you warm up this way, cool down this way, because one of the most powerful tools you can tell your clients is why. And so specifically for the pelvic floor, is training in that sub-maximal threshold can be really, really powerful. They're at the gym, they're with their community, they're with their friends, they're getting a workout in, but they're also able to do it confidently where they don't feel like they're going to soak their pants and then feel like they can never show their face again. So I want to leave you with that. Take this information, apply it, ask the questions. Even if they're not complaining of something pelvic floor-wise, ask them, because they may not associate it with the current symptom that they're having. So ask them about their bowels, ask them about their bladder, ask them about pain, even if they're not bringing it up, because you might start seeing some trends that you can add to your subjective cluster and continue to better your practice. Drop in the comments if you have some other things to add that you've seen in the clinic. I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a great Monday and a great week, and we will see you next time.